disappears. Now, where it is, it's in his hand.
Ramesses, let my people go!
Still gnawing away at that bone, are we? Carry on.
You cannot keep ignoring us.
Enough. I will hear no more of this Hebrew nonsense. Bring him to me.
Moses!
No!
Take the staff in your hand, Moses.
Blood!
The plagues that God sent Egypt were designed to attack their gods. The Nile River was considered the river bringer of life, and God made it a river of death. All the fish died, and the people couldn't drink of the water of the Nile. Pharaoh's question to Moses was, "Who is the Lord?" And I mentioned last week that the Israeli God was invisible. And Pharaoh worshiped visible gods. The Egyptians all had visible gods. And so Pharaoh probably wasn't impressed with Israel's invisible God, because even if they had an invisible God, how come he had control over God's people? They were slaves. So he refused. He wasn't going to deliver the children of Israel. And so God sent plagues. And the plagues were designed to attack the Egyptian gods. One of the plagues was the hail. The hail came down, and that was an attack against the sky goddess. That God could interrupt a quiet day with hail. And he sent locusts, and that was to attack the goddess of crops. And they destroyed the crops. And God sent darkness, and darkness was designed to make fun of Egypt's chief god, the sun god. And for 3 days it was pitch black. But I'd like to focus in on the second plague, because it has to do with the frogs. I mean, cute little frogs. And I would have even thought about sending frogs, but the frogs were a god. The Egyptians worshipped the frogs. This is what God says in Exodus 8, verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all the territory with frogs. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, your bedroom, your bed.'" Imagine that. "The houses of your servants, on your people, into your ovens and cooking bowls." I mean, everywhere they turned, there was a frog. The Pharaoh thought that Moses was bluffing, but God said no. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams and cause frogs to come up on the land of Egypt." So the people walk out one day and there are frogs everywhere. Frogs were their gods. It was considered a crime to kill a frog. But they had millions of frogs hopping all over the place. That seemed like I think God's got a sense of humor. He just sends frogs to these people. There are just millions and millions of frogs coming out after them. But when you read through the plagues of Egypt, I know the thought would have to come to somebody's mind, say, what does this have to do with me? I mean, plagues. Is God plaguing us? Well, I got good news and bad news for you. Number one, the good news is God is not plaguing us. But this is the bad news. We are plaguing ourselves. We have created situations for us, and I'm talking about Americans, and this could be true of other nations, but we Americans have created situations that we have actually turned against ourselves and are hurting ourselves. We have endangered plants and endangered animals. And these animals are set aside as you're not to hurt them, you're not to do anything with it because they might become extinct, so we protect them. But we don't have endangered children. And these are our lives. Planned Parenthood was exposed selling baby parts. And as horrible as the exposure was in the videos that they took of so-called doctors talking about how much they were going to pay for certain organs in a body, instead of prosecuting Planned Parenthood, they went after the people who went after the information because they had a forged driver's license. Isn't that kind of weird? Every year, 750,000 teenagers become pregnant. And in that year, 262,000 have abortions. Our children apparently are not on the endangered list. We're doing that to ourselves. Our laws and our systems and our beliefs and our slogans are hurting. We plague. We live in a land that's plagued by ourselves. The government for the longest time has been warning us that cigarette smoke is harmful. Am I right about that? I mean, you see it on television, you see it even on cigarette packages. The Surgeon General says smoking can lead to cancer. And the government then tells us that 60 chemicals in cigarette smoke. If there was just one chemical in cigarette smoke that led to cancer, people should be thinking about 60 chemicals in cigarette smoke can lead to cancer. These are the facts. It's not something I made up somewhere, but it's just a fact. 16 million Americans are living today with diseases that have been caused by smoking-related illnesses that they have. Some of them don't even know they have them, but these are the numbers. 16 million Americans, 480,000 Americans will die every year because of cigarette-induced illnesses. That's 1,300 people dying every day. Isn't that a plague? And it's a plague we brought on ourselves. And of those numbers, 42,000 die because of secondhand smoke. I remember when I was a kid, my mother she was pretty bold about, she was little, but she was pretty bold. If she sat in the subway system or the bus and somebody was smoking, in those days you could, she would go over to them and say, "What are you doing that for?" So naturally, we grew up knowing that you weren't supposed to smoke. There was one time when I was downstairs and somebody handed me, I was just a little kid, handed me a cigarette, and I took it in my hand, and the next thing I heard was, "Joseph, get up here." She was 5 stories up watching me, and when I got upstairs, she kicked the tar and nicotine right out of me. The facts are these: smoking will not send you to hell. It'll get you to heaven, maybe sooner, but it doesn't send you to hell. Now here's the point that I want to make. We bring this on ourselves. A person goes, they pay for the cigarettes, and nobody forced them to smoke. They're smoking. The problem I have is that the government subsidizes tobacco farmers to grow the stuff that they tell us we shouldn't smoke. That's a plague. So the tobacco farmers grow the tobacco and are subsidized, and then they export it to other countries, knowing that those other countries are going to be smoking and it's going to do the same damage that it does to Americans. That's a plague. That's a plague that we bring on ourselves. So the good news is God is not plaguing us. The bad news is we're doing it to ourselves. We hurt ourselves. I read this week a couple of articles about our justice system, and it could be that the American justice system is the best in the country, in the world, I don't know. But I do know this, that a whole lot of attention is given to the rights of criminals, and less attention is given to the rights of the victims. I read about a man in California who broke into a home from the skylight. He fell and broke his leg and sued the owner of the house and won. Is that a problem? This happened in 1979. This is a true story. I heard this week. There was a woman who was taken to a man's apartment, and she was abused and raped, and she was screaming. And while she was screaming, the neighbors heard the screaming. They called the police, and the police came, and they knocked on the door, and the man refused to let them in. So they broke the door down. They arrested the man. They rescued the woman. And they found out that this man was accused 6 times of raping women and was waiting to be charged. And they threw the case out of court. And the reason is because the police kicked in the door without getting the man's permission. That blows my mind. I don't understand. I don't even understand the reasoning behind the reasoning that they come up with. But the truth of the matter is, so often we are protecting our criminals more than we are protecting the victims that are ones that suffer from the crime. That's a plague. It's a plague that we live in. In our schools, our children are being taught that we come from animals. Now, if we come from animals, let's say we come from the chimpanzee or the monkey or whoever, I mean, if that's what they're going to be teaching in school, then why would they be so surprised when these kids grow up and act like animals? I don't get that. They're just doing what they told they came from, and it's amazing to me. What is amazing to me is that how could they just simply dismiss God from the equation? Because the creation is so complex, and everything that is here could not possibly have just come by accident. Yet the professors in our universities are willing to teach that it was an accident. And you know, the thought occurred to me that if the simplest living cell was an accident, I mean the simple little bacteria, that little cell, that the odds for that happening by accident are this. Take a sand dune. It's got billions of little grains of sand. Suppose you took one of those grains of sand and painted it green and mixed it in. Then you got a blind man, and you told the blind man to come and pick one grain of sand, and the chances of him finding that particular green grain of sand is the odds that life could have sprung out of an accident. But actually, the odds that I just gave you are wrong. Because if you wanted to do this experiment properly, you would have to take the entire planet Earth and fill it with sand. Everything, the oceans, the mountains, everything, all sand. And now send a blind man to pick up that one particular green grain of sand. And those are the odds. I didn't make this thing up. I'm not smart enough, and I don't know math enough. But these are what the mathematicians have come up with. Those are the odds for one simple living cell to somehow come into existence by accident. I think, professing ourselves to be wise, we become foolish, and we're willing to believe things that are so far-fetched, and I'm not up here to knock evolution. They could teach evolution. They ought to bring God into the picture. Anyway, let the children figure out which one sounds more reasonable to them, and not put God out of the picture. You can't take God out of the picture anyway. Not recently, but ever since they've examined a living cell and realized that it is so complex that the only conclusion you can come to is that the intelligent design put it together, evolutionists don't know what to do with that. Because if you talk about intelligent design, they say right away, you're trying to bring God into it. You don't need to bring God into it. Just look at the one little cell and try to tell me that the thousands of things that are operating in that cell that are so complex just suddenly, accidentally, come on. We plague ourselves with information and plague ourselves with ideas that are just not true. We hurt ourselves. It's not really easy to listen to rap music. And by the way, all rap music is not bad. There's some Christian rap music. So this is not a statement against rap music totally. But one of the things is I can't listen to the lyrics because it's so quick. And it could be my problem because I maybe need more hearing aids or better. But I do know this. I've read some of the lyrics. And the lyrics in some of the rap music would actually be illegal to speak on the radio, but they're allowed to broadcast it under the guise of it's an art form. But you couldn't say those words on television or say those words on radio without them bleep, 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 bleep. We're doing stuff to ourselves. We hurt ourselves. We plague ourselves. And people are looking to the government to fix the things that are happening in our society. And the government cannot stop the plagues that we have begun. They can't. The government can't even stop the simple things. The government can't stop the plague of alcoholism. The government can't stop the plague of drug addiction. The government can't stop the plague of pornography. You know that the Supreme Court can't even come together to come up to an accepted definition of the word pornography because there's First Amendment rights and there's the art forms and we are plagued and we're stuck. And we happen to be in an election year this year, and the politicians are out there, and they're making speeches, and they're debating, and they're telling us how they can fix this and how they're going to fix that, and there's all this, a lot of words out there. But the government can't fix the plagues that we have created. The government doesn't even know how to. So we will go to the polls and we will elect the president. The president will get into office and we will expect the president to fulfill the promises that he made he's going to fix, and the president can't fix the plague. Congress can't fix the plague. The Supreme Court can't fix the plague. I have to hand it to Pharaoh because he was smart enough to know that the government couldn't do it. This is what Pharaoh says. And Pharaoh called for Moses. This is after the frogs were all over the land. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me, and I will let the people go. Ask God to do it. Ask God to do something about this plague. Because we can't do anything about the plague that's come over this land and all these frogs that are around and the confusion and the slimy, smelly thing. We don't have any way of handling. We don't ask God. And at least Pharaoh had enough wisdom to know that there are some things that only God can do. And we have in our Bible this word, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. If my people. I guess we shouldn't be so concerned about what's going on at the White House. We should be all concerned about what's going on at our own house. And God's word says, if my people. And so the responsibility becomes mine and it becomes yours to go before the only one that can handle the plagues that we have hurt ourselves with. Lord, help me. Step into my world and help me get through this thing because I can't do this. Doctors can't do this. A psychiatrist can't do it. The medicine can't. Nothing can fix the problem of the plague that I'm going through. I need God's help. And then Moses says something that really not only intrigued me, but it got me thinking. And he tells Pharaoh, he says, accept the honor of saying when I shall intercede for you. Just tell me when you want the frogs to go. And I'm thinking, I'm watching this thing. I don't know, Hollywood hasn't put this together, but I see Pharaoh on his throne going, when all the frogs that are in the ovens and the food that we eat in the beds and the sheets and the houses, when should I ask Moses to get rid of all those frogs? And Pharaoh said, tomorrow. Tomorrow. You're plagued today, but you want the frogs to go tomorrow. I think this is one of the problems that we have with New Year's resolutions. We make New Year's resolutions on the 31st of December, and because we're going to start them tomorrow. When is a person supposed to work on their budget? Tomorrow? First of all, tomorrow may never even come. But that's not when you work on your budget. You don't work on your budget tomorrow. You don't start changing a bad habit tomorrow. You change the bad habit today, not tomorrow. When do you start saving for a rainy day? Tomorrow? I'm going to start exercising tomorrow. Today, I'm just going to sit like a couch potato on his stand and watch the television. But tomorrow, I'm going to work out. And I'm going to start eating properly tomorrow. But this hot fudge sundae today, I'll quit smoking tomorrow. I'll quit being angry and throwing a temper tantrum tomorrow. I'll quit drinking tomorrow. I'm going to quit being moody tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, I will no longer be cranky. Starting tomorrow, I will no longer be stubborn. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to give up my mean streak and my mean spirit and my critical tomorrow. You know what Pharaoh's saying? Pharaoh's saying, I want to hold on to the frogs one more day. I got to have these frogs. Just give me one more day with the frogs. If I could hold on to my bad habit one more day, if I could keep my mean spirit one more day, I'll change tomorrow, but not today. Today, I don't want to change. I know I'm going to hold on to that bad relationship today, but tomorrow I will deal with it. The devil's biggest lie is this. He's slick. The devil is slick. In fact, the scripture says we should not be unaware of his tricks. And the devil will sneak up on us. And he'll tell us exactly what the preacher was saying. He's good. And he'll say, you know what? You got to change your ways. You know you have to change your ways because every time you do what you're doing, you're feeling bad. So you got to change your ways. You got to break that habit, and you got to change the friends that you have, and you got to surround yourself with good things, and you got to start having the better at it. You got to do that. Do it tomorrow. Not today. And so we live with the plague, and it never goes away because of tomorrow. Listen to the words. I will tomorrow. There was a professor who was taking a lot of speaking engagements, and it seemed as if he was giving less and less time to the students he was teaching and also to his family, just traveling around, flying all over the country, speaking. And so one day he decided, this is the last speaking engagement I'm going to take. I just got to spend more time in my office. I got to spend more time with my family. So he wrote a note. And the note simply said, do not take any more speaking engagements. And left it on his desk. And he flew off to his speaking engagement. He never came back. He had a heart attack. They found a note on his desk. Tomorrow is not a good time to start. Today is the day of salvation. If we've been plagued by worry or plagued by fear or plagued by depression or plagued by whatever we're plagued by, today is the day to come to Jesus and say, Jesus, I need your help. I can't do this by myself. Would you help me? The message is so simple. I mean, this is the gospel message. Come unto me, all you labor and are heavy laden. I will give you, I will show you. Be willing to come and let Jesus do the rest.